What's up, ladies and gentlemen? I'm Rod Murray, and this is Draft Day, a limited series where myself and Nate Coleman will cover the Washington football team up until draft day. In this part of this limited series, we're going to do what's called War Room, where we bring in other fan analysts and individuals that know their stuff about football, and we talk about various positions as if we're in the war room ourselves as scouts, and we're going to pick a player. For our first episode, we're joined by Deont'e and Pascal Todd of the Todd Podcast, and we will dive deep into all of the quarterback prospects, as well as talk about the current status of the Washington football team. How we doing, gentlemen?
Doing fantastic, man.
Doing well. Looking forward to this and the war room.
Yeah, we made it. We made it.
You made it on the first episode. Welcome, gentlemen. So without further ado, before we get into it, there's a lot of great insight and information. We're going to hand the floor to you guys to introduce yourselves.
I guess I'll go first. We always don't know who to go first, so one of us just takes it over. So my name is Pascal Todd. As you can see, born and raised in the DMV area in Virginia. Fell in love with Washington football and football as a whole at like 12. Like fell in love. I don't know why, but I just did. It was like the 2008 season, that Steelers game. I don't know if y'all remember. Well, y'all remember when they took over the stadium. So anyway, since then, the love has just grown from season to season. The worse they are, the more I seem to love them. I can't explain it. And then just like now, being able to like talk about it, have a platform to talk about it, and people like wanting to listen is really cool. And quarterback is my favorite position to watch, to like play on Madden, to play in flag, to throw football, to study. I love quarterback and talk all day. So thanks for having me on, guys. If it was like offensive tackle, I'd be bored.
You're not invited for the war room on offensive tackle.
You're not coming back for
that's fine with me.
And I'm Deont'e, aka Tay from the Tay and Todd Podcast. Just appreciate it being out here. I was a fan since LeVar Arrington, Jason Campbell, those days, man, and Rod Gardner, those days, and I didn't really start growing a love. Actually, my fandom took a shift, and where I knew that I was there was when Sean Taylor passed, and that's when like my heart just really connected with the team. And ever since then, we just took off, man. And Todd and I both started the podcast almost a year,
almost exactly a year, yeah,
almost like exactly a year ago. Yep, and it's been cool interacting with you guys and getting to know you all. So I'm looking forward to the war room tonight.
Yeah,
there it is. Well, since you won't probably be back on around your year, happy 1 year anniversary. That is the toughest part of taking off. So again, to make it to a year in itself is a big accomplishment. Don't want to ever sleep on that. Especially I'm sure you see how stuff come and go at times. So big ups on that. All right.
Right. Appreciate it.
We're gonna have a lot of fun tonight. A lot of insightful conversation. Hopefully we'll have some back and forth where we're not just arguing at each other, but we could talk to you about the current status of the Washington football team. Right. So we know coming out of last year, the quarterback position had probably the biggest question mark going into this offseason, right? There was you name a name when we threw it around. At one point it was Matthew Stafford, Jimmy Garoppolo. I've heard if there was a quarterback that's in the last year of his contract or in a nasty situation, at some way, some form, he was tied to the Washington football team, right?
Yep.
Well, in the wee hours a couple of nights ago, we got our temporary answer, and Ryan Fitzpatrick, as we know, signed a $10 million 1-year deal to arguably at this point be the starting quarterback, gentlemen. So I want to start there before we get into the war room. Exactly. Let's talk about our current status and just kind of give us your initial reactions of the signing.
You want me to go first? I guess I can go first. Okay. All right. So it's like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a good analogy. There's no good analogies, but anyway, okay. They had to sign somebody. You couldn't go into, even if their plan was to draft somebody with the 19th pick and trade up and all that, couldn't go into the draft with Kyle Allen coming off a broken ankle and Taylor Heineke coming off 2 games of experience and also, injury prone, 2 undrafted quarterbacks. You had to sign somebody. It was a matter of who. And so, they couldn't put all their eggs in that basket. And so Ryan Fitzpatrick was not on my radar, right? I wasn't vouching for him, but I'm content with the move considering they had to sign somebody. The other candidates were Mitch Trubisky, Marcus Mariota, trading for Sam Darnold. Of those options, at least with Ryan Fitzpatrick, we'll have some fun. We know we'll have some big plays. We know we'll have a leader. And then on top of that, he's the perfect guy for if you do want to get your quarterback of the future and have someone to sit behind him. So in that sense, I think it was a better move. There's a part of me that likes that he's a 1-year option, like no questions asked. Like he is undoubtedly a bridge. He's not Mariota where you're going to try to fix him. He's 38. He's, so in that sense, I like it because it means they know they do still need a long-term answer. It's going to be exciting for a few games at least.
I like it. Deont'e?
Yeah, same. I like the pickup. It wasn't what I was expecting. I was expecting Mariota. I did not want Mariota. I did not want Teddy Bridgewater, but I definitely didn't want Teddy Bridgewater. I was starting to warm up to Minshew, honestly. He's similar, I think, as far as slinging the ball around and moving and craftiness and being kind of like a backyard football type of style that I think Ryan Fitzpatrick brings. But most importantly, I really like Fitzpatrick because he can get those balls in between that cover two, that corner, and that safety. And I think that's going to give these receivers a lot of opportunities because we have all this speed. But other than that, he can move in the pocket. I like he's accurate for the most part. Yeah, he has bad games, but I think he brings that excitement that you can kind of build around and kind of, he has a good reputation in the locker room. I know Tua said that, or I don't know who it was, but one of the guys on the team, one of the receivers said he's one of the best teammates he's ever had. So that's something you want to build your team around, that veteran, someone who can help you as you go along until you find that guy.
So we have a FPC chat, and Rod is a member of it. A few of our friends like George and Rant and all kinds of guys. We got like 10 or 12 guys in the chat. And we just talk about Washington all day. It's sick. I mean, there's like 50 messages in there when I wake up in the morning. Rod knows he gets sick of us.
More than that.
Yeah, and most of them are me. Like it's me, like just like blowing you guys up. But so there was one person who would not shut up about Ryan Fitzpatrick, and if you had to guess who it was me. I've been talking about Ryan Fitzpatrick for a while, and like pat my back. I didn't expect them to do it, but my reasoning for Fitzpatrick was so we know who he is. He's a bridge quarterback. We know exactly what his role is going to be. There's no sugarcoating it. On top of that, he's one of the only options out there. And when I say options, like people, the first thing they say is like, oh, they get upset and there's someone else they wanted. And I'm all about like opportunity cost. Give me the better option and I'll listen. And no one can present much of a better option. I've heard Sam Darnold, really? I've heard Marcus Mariota, really? The thing with these first round picks who bust at their first vocation is when they go to vocation 2 and vocation 3, they have almost 0% chance of working out. They do. It's a fact. So I've run like similarity searches on like Sam Darnold and guys like this. Like they almost never pan out. So anyway, what I'll say is like Fitzpatrick, he's an elevator. He raises the ceiling of your offense. And the first thing people say about him is he's a gunslinger, obviously. So that means he throws a lot of interceptions, but he's willing to take more risk. Well, last year we ranked in the bottom 5 in turnovers anyway. So wouldn't it be nice we could probably still do that. And we won, 7 games. We were competitive. Imagine being able to score more points. And you probably have less turnovers than you have. Like he's going to raise the floor and the ceiling of the offense. And if he just implodes and is terrible all season, we're going to get a top 10 pick. So to me, it's kind of a win-win. You get to rebuild while being competitive and raising your ceiling. That's exciting. Most teams do not get the opportunity to rebuild while still being competitive. And we're one of the few that get to do it. So I say, enjoy the ride.
Enjoy the ride.
Yeah, I'm big on that, man. I think you look at Ryan Fitzpatrick, and he reminds you of that player on the football team in high school that everybody was cool with. You knew what you was getting, and you knew he was about to be gone. All right, he's not more than me. He knows that, which in my opinion, I think is good. And everybody in the locker room knows that about him. But for the year you have him, I think he's going to give you all he has, what we've seen in his career. You look back at his tenure, it's been a lot of inconsistencies, but he hasn't been playing a full year. Like the last time he played a full year, you got to go back to when he was with the Jets, and that's a 10-16, where he almost threw for 4,000 yards in a season. All right, so he has the ability when given the leverage. Right, in Miami, we knew it was basically the same situation. Obviously, in a year before Tua, hey, look, you're just a bridge quarterback. Go out and perform, and the number 3 overall pick where they're at now. Right, so again, going to what Nate said, on the good side of it, we're a 8-8 team, a 9-6 team, and we're another wild card division leader. Or on the bad side of it, you're a top 5 pick for whatever prospect coming out 2022. So I like the signing. To me, it's low risk, high reward. It's not a lot of money tied to him. $10 million at the quarterback position is a steal if he gives us anything productive for the year, right? At 12 million max. I think we're fine, and it gives us a little bit of stability in that quarterback room. Now, at least you could put a comma on there instead of a question mark, because it may be something to come in the draft for now, or this might be it until next season. But for now, at least we've addressed it, and I think that's the most important part. Going in there with him, Taylor, and Kyle, you have a quarterback room that is now, at least for now, sufficient to push into the next season, which is the number one question we had on the priority board, in my opinion.
Yeah, right. And I guess a question I'd throw out to you guys is like, is it really a competition? Because that's the word I keep hearing is competition. It's a real competition between Kyle Allen, Taylor Heineke, and Ryan Fitzpatrick. Do you guys think that's just coach speak, right?
Yeah, no,
absolutely.
It's not. Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, for one, you're not going to have the 3-way competition, like especially in a COVID training camp. That's insane. No one gets better from that. And then on top of that, I mean, you signed the guy and you're paying him $10 million, and you're paying Taylor Heineke $1.5 million. I don't even know what you're paying Kyle Allen. You might not even be paying him $1 million, right? So
it's like, what is it? Why do I know this? I think it's like 675 or something.
Okay,
it's not even
exactly.
$1 million. Yeah,
exactly. The money talks. To be honest, I think that they may just come out and say he's the starter. I know that Rivera said he regretted not having the competition, but think about last year. You didn't have a competition between Dwayne Haskins, an unproven quarterback, and Kyle Allen, also an unproven quarterback, and Alex Smith coming off of the worst injury ever. This year, if you don't have a competition for Ryan Fitzpatrick and Kyle, no one's mad at you. You know who the better player should be.
I think it's going to be Fitzpatrick. I think Fitzpatrick, one of those guys that just roll out the bed and throw for 450. He just has it.
You're right.
I mean,
you're right.
seriously, he just like no stretching, nothing. Just come on, give me the football. Let's go.
When he rolls out of bed, like, do you think he's wearing like a onesie, right? Like with the butt, like it's like open
and then the jersey and pads are under it too.
A onesie uniform. Can you imagine?
Absolutely.
Man, he getting it done, man. I don't think it's a question at all. It's just coach speak. They got to say it. All quarterbacks you just resigned, like, so you gotta give them something there. You ain't bringing back there to just be a backup. All three of them, Allen and Heineke, has experience. Heineke put up probably the most competition to Tom Brady what he saw this entire playoffs. So he's riding away. He was able to rally this team to not a win, but an impressive
competitive loss.
Exactly, a competitive loss. If you want to give participation trophies out, a competitive loss. So he's riding a little wave. You got to give him an opportunity. But at the end of the day, I expect Ryan Fitzpatrick to have a C on his chest. August.
If Dwayne Haskins got a C, then I think Ryan Fitzpatrick's definitely getting a C.
Absolutely. Exactly. So we'll see. Who knows?
I think the competition between Allen and Heineke
for second
for backup. Yeah. That's the only competition.
I think for a roster spot. Do you think we carry 3 quarterbacks into the season? I think it's a competition for a roster spot.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, you got to factor in the injury for Allen, but not to hijack the host chair, but the questions are flowing, Rod. I have another one. So
go ahead.
So the next thing I see on Twitter and I see on the internet a lot is everyone is taking victory laps over Fitzpatrick signing, meaning that they're not going to trade up. And this is a question, but it's long-winded, so bear with me. So the thing is, like, NFL teams are super risk adverse already. Most teams don't want to trade up. Like, it's less than a 10% chance. Like they're risk adverse. They don't want to give up all these assets to move up. They're afraid to do it. So any team, it's very unlikely they do it just to start off with, like in a vacuum. Right. So when you add in these other factors, like I feel like people think they're prophets for saying that they're probably not going to trade up. Like, congratulations that you figured that out on your own. Like, that's super obvious that they're probably not going to trade up. That's not the question. The question is, what does it cost to trade up? Because that's the only question out there that should matter. The only thing that matters is value. What does the market say? And I guarantee you they've looked at the market. They're in contact with all of these teams right now. They have a good idea of what it's going to cost, and that can change on draft day. So my question to every one of you, after is a long-winded question, but my question is, what do you think Fitzpatrick stops us from trading up this year? And what do you think the price is to trade up? Let's say into the top 5, the top 6.
I guess I can go first again. So like Mark Bullock is someone who I really respect his work. He thinks that it doesn't. He thinks if they were going to trade up, they could have just rolled with Allen and Heineke as bridges, which I agree with the principle of that. But again, they couldn't put all their eggs in that basket with the 19th pick. To me, if you would have signed Marcus Mariota or traded a 4th or 5th round pick, that to me kind of says maybe we're not trading up because we invested money and capital into him. He's younger. And so we're probably looking at potential. If you traded for Darnold, you're probably definitely not trading up. But the Fitzpatrick move, you established the short-termness of it. All right. I just made that a word. You established that this is a short-term answer. Not only is it a short-term answer, it's a short-term answer and a person who in the short term would be perfect for filling the role of a mentor for a young quarterback. And so in my mind, Fitzpatrick would speak more to them trading up rather than less, just because of the fact that you would prefer him. You don't care about your first round rookie sitting behind Mariota or behind Darnold or behind Trubisky, but Fitzpatrick is perfect for that. So to answer the trade up question, I would say I'm looking at 7 at the latest. I think 7 is the sweet spot. 5, maybe the other sweet spot. Trading up, you're giving up, I would say, a 2nd, a 3rd this year at least, and probably a 1st and 3rd or 4th next year. That's what I would say. That's way above what the draft value chart would suggest. Like, that's certainly above what the draft value chart suggests, but I think the price will be higher.
Are you including the 1st this year too?
I always automatically include that and then don't say it.
It's fine.
Yeah. So 19, a 2nd, a 3rd, a 1st, and like a 3rd or 4th next year. That's what I think.
I'm going to say I don't think that's out of the picture of moving up. However, I do think it's going to be in the latter end, maybe the latter end, but the latter end, the top 10. So maybe like 10. I think just in case a quarterback falls, they'll move up to 11. They move up to 10. But
10
now
or 11
I'm thinking,
is tricky because that's the Cowboys and Giants. I wonder if that's a move that can be made.
Yeah, or maybe after, they're not going quarterback. But I'm looking at 2, 3, 4 now because you see Miami. I don't think that I don't know what they're going to do there. They're saying Atlanta now, since Matt Ryan took his pay cut, they may not go quarterback. And then who's at 4? Is it Bengals, Cincinnati, 3 and 4?
Falcons are 4. Cincinnati's 5.
Cincinnati's 5. So you're looking at that sweet spot right there. The Jets at 2. I think they have a limit of what they want to do. Personally, I think to move up in that spot, I'm saying the 1st this year, number 19. I'm saying 2nd, 3rd this year, and then a 1st next year. I think that's enough because those 2 thirds you can move. I think those are equal to a later 1st round pick. Technically, you can move back up into the 1st with those 2, according to the points. But it gets tricky. I don't know if Ron wants to mortgage that much of the future because I think if you can build this year and then offer the same thing next year, I think you're better off. If that makes sense. I think they should move. I think they should sell the farm next year as opposed to this year if the price is too much this year.
What do you think, Rod?
Yeah, I think Ryan Fitzpatrick is insurance. I think before pre the deal, I was probably a 70-30, like trading up as possible. But now I think it's flipped. I think it's a 30% chance we move. Just because I think the draft capital that's tied to it just is a little bit too much. You start looking back at Pascal said 7th. Or you look at the last quarterback, I think that went 7th was Josh Allen. That was a 1st and 2 seconds. What got the deal done for him, and that was in the same year. So essentially, we would give up our day 1 and both day 2s. I mean, obviously both day 2s with the 3rd we got from San Francisco just to get in the top 7, right? To go any higher than that, you're looking at Jared Goff and Carson Wentz and what those deals were, and those were 2 firsts and 2 seconds, right? And again, you're looking at a coach an entire staff that is on year 2, right? You're coming off with what you had, bare minimal production. And yeah, we all know that NFC East was bad, right? But you were still very competitive to win the division. And again, almost a playoff game, just given some other spots, not just at the quarterback position. So I don't think you wage the farm this year. I'm with Deont'e on that, where you get the best player available to fill other gaps in this year. And on your 3rd year, when that let's be honest, how the coaching carousels go, when your seat's kind of hot, where then maybe you go all in on the quarterback. For right now, though, you continue to do what we've been doing, build at every other position. There's question marks at linebacker. There's question mark at safety. There's question marks at our offensive line. Antonio Gibson had a great rookie year, but he can use some help there. We saw how his injury derailed the running game towards the end of the season. So maybe the option isn't going forward, but maybe it's going back to pick up some more draft capital. And maybe you find another quarterback day 3. I know we don't say it's a lot there, but maybe not saying there's a gym. I don't think there's a gym, but maybe there's a guy that they like that they can build with, all right, over a year or 2. And that may show some spurts, but I don't see it going forward.
Yeah. So I'm with you guys. I think the floor for a trade is probably 2 firsts and 2 seconds and change, something like that. So with that being said, I think you shouldn't go into the draft with any position in mind to draft. You should stay completely flexible the entire time. You're looking for a quarterback and you're going to check every market you can. You're going to be in contact with all the teams to see what the deal is, see what's on the table. So that should be one of your plans, but you got to have contingency plans. You got to have backups. You got to have an idea what you want to do. So we don't know until the draft unfolds. It's kind of my answer. It's ambiguous right now, but you damn well sure that they're exploring every option and they got to be open to it. So I guess let's open it up into, we can start talking about prospects a little bit. I guess my first thing would be, when we talk about quarterbacks, it's the hardest position to evaluate in sports, and it's the most important position there is. So the big question for me when you talk about scouting, because there's so much nuance to the position, there's so much, how do you dissect the player from the system, the player from the talent, the player from coaching, all of those situations. I guess my question to you all is, what do you think is translatable from college to the pros? What do you think is the most important things that are translatable from college to the pros? And I'll throw it to you first, Todd. What do you think?
Okay, so I'm looking mostly at things that are not guaranteed to improve on, like footwork, right? Like footwork is easier to fix. Accuracy, on the other hand, which can be tied to footwork, accuracy is not so easy to fix. You don't usually see guys who struggle with accuracy come into the NFL and fix it. Josh Allen is the exception. Everyone wants to point to Josh Allen and say it can be done. No, he's the exception, like Ryan Tannehill is the exception going to his second team. So the first thing I'm really looking for, honestly, is accuracy. Before how hard you can throw the ball, before how well you can move, or any of that, can you just throw the ball accurately? Because at the end of the day, none of that other stuff matters if you can't get the ball to the receiver. So accuracy. And then after that, like processing speed, which can be hard to quantify because we don't know what they're supposed to be doing on any given play. But at the same time, you can kind of tell how well they can process, even if it's just 1 to 2, right? How quickly can you get through that? How quickly does your brain process? That's harder to tell just from watching, especially like the TV copy, but processing speed, I would say, as much as you can. And then third, how you are in the pocket, like how you perform in the pocket and under pressure. So does everything change when you're under pressure? Do your mechanics change? Does the accuracy go away? Does the decision making go away? Do you have a natural feel for pressure in the pocket? Do you have a natural feel for backside ends coming around the corner to step up, to slide right, to slide left? Is that natural for you or is it unnatural? Because that's another thing. That's natural, unnatural. You can maybe improve on that, but if you're not good at it, you'll probably never be that good at it. You'll never be great at it, probably, if you're not good at it. But if you're good at it in college, that should translate pretty well to the NFL typically because it's just a natural feel. So accuracy, the second one, what was the second one? Oh, yeah, accuracy, processing speed, and then your pocket poise under pressure, essentially.
And I'll follow up after that. I would say he took a lot of my stuff. I think
Yeah.
accuracy is the
That's why going
biggest.
first is best. That's why going first is
Yeah.
best.
I'm switching up the order next time. Todd, you mentioned, like, I'm gonna give Rod a chance.
I should have
next time.
taken one thing. That's my fault. I should have taken one thing.
Oh no! You killed it. You got it.
All right.
So,
Go ahead,
so
Tay.
I'm gonna throw in a little bit of stuff just based off of past quarterbacks we've seen in Washington. I'm gonna say accuracy, and then I'm gonna say work ethic. I think you got to be you absolutely have to be a bookworm. You have to study. You have to love the game. You have to be just mind blown. I mean, you just it's a lifestyle. As me and Todd always say,
Yes,
that quarterbacking is a lifestyle.
TB12.
I know TB12, TB12, and we talked to someone from Ohio State. I can't think of her name. OT, and Stephanie Odie. And she was talking about how Fields was just running the meetings and how he just handles the pressers right and just answers everything right. And how he's a leader and how he just lives football. That's what I look for. Something like that: accuracy, work ethic, and just a student of the game.
Good.
I think all that stuff translates, and that's not just with football. That's with anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll follow up and say that's my go-to is the intangibles. The football stuff, you take the worst quarterback, you put him in with the best. If he struggles throwing deep balls, they're gonna make it all short, right? If he can't throw short, they're just gonna make it all long, right? A coach is gonna do whatever he can to make the puzzles fit for his quarterback. So the accuracy, the footwork, I feel like to a certain degree, a coach has a say-so in moving that meter left or right? The intangibles, I think that's on the person, right? You look at these top 5 quarterbacks that we have this year, and you can almost make a movie off their storyline leading up to the draft, right? You have Trevor Lawrence, Sunshine's been the guy since he got to Clemson. Here he is now, so going to go with number 1, right? Out of the story, right? You look at Justin Fields, starts at Penn State, goes to Georgia, ends up at sits behind Jake Fromm at Georgia, then goes to Ohio State and lead them and arguably what could have been a national championship year, then COVID hit. So look at that story, that mental toughness it takes to lead that team through all that. Zach Wilson, who knew his story a year ago, small city, now he's at BY, look at what he's doing. Mac Jones, right? There's a narrative that you could throw any quarterback out there with all the talent that's at Alabama and be successful. And look what he was able to do in a year. You know what I'm saying? And who am I missing?
Better than Tua.
And played better than Tua. And Trey Lance, right? How did this guy go onto everybody's radar to where he didn't get a scholarship look, ends up at North Dakota State, and he throws, 29 touchdowns and 0 interceptions in a year, right? And if you look at him on tape, he's like Ben Roethlisberger and Mike Vick rolled into one person on various plays, right? So I just think you look at the intangibles and they're all been, you talk to whatever coach, they have the intangibles, right? The leadership, the poise, the mental toughness, the character, the work ethic, what you just did on Deont'e. So that's what I'm looking at. So if you look at these 5, that's what I'm going for. If I'm on a losing team during COVID and your coach has to be out, or you lose your starting center because he has contact tracing, who's going to be the quarterback, the rookie, to be able to keep this team gelling through a 16-game season, even if not more than that, going into the playoffs. So, the on-the-field stuff are important to me, but the one position where I put intangibles over everything else is the quarterback position.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, those are some good answers. So me, like I'm more of a numbers guy, but
right.
I will admit, out of any position on the gridiron, that quarterback takes the most intangibles, right? So for me, like what I look at things that are predictive. Obviously, I love numbers. So the most predictive quarterback stats, for the most predictive stats are completion percentage over expectation. I won't go and drill on about that. And PFF passing grade. They've run a ton of tests on what's the most translatable to the next level. It's not touchdown to interception ratio. It's not completion percentage. It's not any adjusted yards per attempt. Whatever you have, yards per attempt. The most translatable is passing grade from PFF and completion percentage over expectation. And I think the reason for that is because like accuracy is translatable. And those 2 metrics do the best job of taking out all the noise, taking out all the, the drops, the bad routes, all that stuff, and just connecting you with what really matters. And that's one thing I've seen, and it's true in the NFL too, is like passing grade is very sticky year to year. If you have a high passing grade, you usually have a high passing grade next year. So that's one thing I look for. I know that's nerdy, and you guys like are rolling your eyes a little bit, which I totally understand. But I mean, like I can look up, I can look up the passing grade for all the college quarterbacks and look at them all, and I can have a pretty good idea of like, okay, that's an issue. And then the next thing is passing out of a clean pocket is very predictive, because that should be when you're most efficient as a passer, is when you don't have pressure in your face. That's predictive year to year. And I actually have a nice little chart for you guys that talks about that a little bit more, and we'll get into that in a second. But the other thing that pressure, when you're under pressure, I don't think that's as predictive year to year. But what I do think is predictive is creating off script. You have a guy like Russell Wilson who consistently created off script in college. And that was something that translated to the NFL. And that's why he was one of the only outliers as a day 2 pick that was able to make it work, is because he had the intangibles, the ability to create off script and do that in the pros. And the reason I think it's translatable is because when you get to the pros, it buys you more time and allows you more of a leash to make mistakes, because you can make plays on your own. You can create plays that other players couldn't do. So speaking of making plays, because the questions are they're flowing to me now. I don't know if it's light or it's just you guys, you're bringing out some good questions. So I'm not going to go in order here, but we're going to dive into the prospects. The first prospect I want to talk about is someone who doesn't create off script and is going to go in the first round. I know Teo, no. Tay over here, he's chomping at the bits to talk about Mac Jones. And before I ask the question, I want to say, like, one thing that stuck out to me is, like, people talk about pressure with him, that he struggles and he can't create off script. And that's true. He cannot create off script out of the pocket that much. But what I will say is he led the nation in independent quarterback rating last year when under pressure. He also had the highest PFF passing grade when under pressure within 3 seconds of the snap, out of Trevor Lawrence, out of Justin Fields, out of Trey Lance, everyone. He had the highest marks there for a passing grade. So the narrative that he isn't good under pressure is not true. He makes up for it in other ways. So I guess the question I'd spin back to you guys, and I'm not going to start with Todd this time. I'm going to start with Tay. What do you like about Mac Jones? How do you feel about him, like, fitting in with Washington football? You know, you can talk, tell me what you like, tell me what you don't like, tell me if you think he's a fit, where do you think he's going to go? Like, whatever you're thinking on Mac Jones. I want to hear it from Tay first, and then we'll go to Rod, and then we'll go to Todd.
The only thing I do not like about him is the athleticism. But my thing is this. Since when? I mean, obviously we like the shiny thing. We like the Michael Vicks. We like the Lamar Jacksons. We like all this stuff. But it's like, this man is a technician. He's putting stuff on them. And you still have to distribute the football. I don't care. My thing is this. If you put Lamar Jackson in that offense in Alabama, he would probably go crazy. But he's not throwing for that many yards. And he's not having that many efficient. You know, it's stuff like that I'm seeing with Mac Jones that it's just different. And I think I have this theory that we're looking at all these shiny toys. We're looking at the Trey Lances and the Justin Fields and the Zach Wilsons and how they're so dynamic. And I just think we're missing the man right there in the middle that's not getting no attention. And I think that if he goes to the right system, he's going to be the best quarterback coming, at least this year, I believe. And maybe I think he could be the best quarterback coming out of this draft, because he's a winner, great coaching. He's played in the big games. And if you put him in an offense like Washington, you got all these weapons. Well, what's going to be the excuse now? He has all these weapons now in Washington. So what? Is he going to produce the same? I mean, so what are we saying? He's going to have weapons in Washington. It's not like he's going to Jacksonville or he's going to a different team, the Jets or somebody like that. He's going to a team that has weapons for 4.3 speed, 4.31, 4.39 running back, Logan Thomas, a great defense. And it's like, are we missing the point? Yes, we like the Zach Wilsons. Yes, he can throw the fancy passes. Yes, we like the Justin Fields. He's going to probably run a 4.3. Yes, we like Trey Lance, 29 touchdowns, 0 picks. But let's not forget about Mac Jones. The man can ball. The man can ball, and you don't have to worry about character. He's going to study. He's going to be a leader, and I would love for him to lead my team and watch them. I like everything about him: his accuracy, his deep touch, he can sling the ball a little bit too. And it's just like I said, he can maneuver in the pocket. He faces the pressure. He takes it, and like you said, he's good against pressure. And although he may not be running and throwing off script. You look at Tom Brady; he's not doing that either. He can move in the pocket. You look at Peyton Manning. He can move in the pocket, and I think we're just missing that when I don't think we appreciate Mac Jones like we should.
Rod, what are you thinking on Mac?
Mr. Fundamentals. I mean, that's what he is. I think he's too scripted to a fault, in my opinion. But again, when you have the best offensive line in college, probably the best at every position possible, being at Alabama, you're not asked to do what Trey Lance is or Justin Fields is to some degree, right? And that can maybe hurt you at some points, right? You're not going to have that offensive line that you have in Washington. We saw what it did to the quarterbacks we had, right? The quarterback carousel we had, just because the protection wasn't always there. I think you hit it on the head, so I won't dive on it too much for us, just processing and what he can do as far as throwing the ball. But you have to, at this next level, you have to have some athleticism at the quarterback position, right? You won't have, everything won't be as cookie cutter as it was at Alabama. And that could be an issue, right? That could be an issue very early if sacks become an issue with injury or whatever and don't want to talk it up. But that's my only knock for Mac Jones. The athletic ability hurts me.
Real quick before we get to Todd, one thing I will say really fast is Alabama has like the best facilities in the world as far as like, athletics and everything, maybe better than some NFL teams, maybe better than Washington football. So the fact that like Mac Jones isn't more like chiseled, I know people like laugh at that and stuff, but like what that tells me is maybe he's like peaked as far as being an athlete, as far as like his building his body and stuff. And there's other quarterbacks in this draft, like Lance and even like Fields and Lawrence that can still, they're going to fill out more to me, but that's just a caveat. So Todd, instead of we talked about Jones enough, probably where do you think Mac Jones gets drafted? Cause I think that's a really interesting question. Cause like, some people have him in the top 10. Some people think he's going to fall. I tend to think he's probably going to go in the top 12, but what do you think?
Yeah, I keep going back and forth. I try to look at the teams and say, okay, well, who are the teams that we know are in the market for quarterback and would be interested in Mac Jones, assuming that they're in a position to get him. And so, the first team I think I look at is the Panthers. They were with them at the Senior Bowl all week. They'll probably be in a position to trade up to get one of the better prospects, but we never know what these teams are thinking. So in my mind, that's the first hurdle, the Panthers, right? I think he makes it past the Panthers, but you never know. I don't think the Broncos go there. 10 and 11, no. So 12, you go with the 49ers. Well, okay, the 49ers could be interested in the quarterback, but I think they like Jimmy Garoppolo enough to say, well, he took us to a Super Bowl. He can take this team to a Super Bowl. If we want to replace Jimmy Garoppolo, we want to feel like we're really upgrading Trey Lance, Justin Fields, someone we can run read option with, someone who can be a running threat. So I think he's making it past San Francisco, right? At this point, no one's trading up for him. So the Patriots are the first real hurdle, in my opinion, at 15. But I don't know. The Patriots are so unpredictable, and we do not know what the Patriots do, what Bill Belichick looks for in a quarterback when he's in a position to draft. We have no idea. Because he's had Tom Brady for 20 years. So we don't know if he's just if he knows one of these guys in the second, third, fourth, fifth rounds that he's just going to take, and he says he's got the next Tom Brady. So, and then after that, you go to Washington at 19, and then, the Bears at 20. So, I mean, I will say top 15, just because I think there's a premium on quarterbacks this year. I think it makes sense. But I'm just wondering if I see someone trading up for Mac Jones or if I see the Patriots taking him. That's really the question for me. I don't know if I see someone making a move, but I would say top 15. I would say if Washington wanted him, they'd probably have to trade up for him, and I don't think I see that happening.
Okay. Yeah. No, and I think that's fair. I think out of all the picks, Jones is probably the most uncertain. A scenario I really like is if he happens to fall to 19. I know Deont'e over there is like, then we're going to draft him. But what I would like to see is like, that's the perfect opportunity to leverage him being available and trying to trade back. Right. Because you have the Steelers, you have the Bears right behind us. You have the Saints who need a quarterback as well. I think there's definitely some teams who are going to want to trade up there. So that's definitely an option. You could trade back and maybe get another second pick or get a third pick. a third round pick, and then maybe you could look at a linebacker late in round 1 or whatever you want to do. We already know this. I'm not a big linebacker fan, obviously, but we can talk about that in our linebacker episode, and I'll make people angry. But let's move on to some other quarterbacks. So,
Pascal, I like them at 9. I like if there's a run on quarterbacks early. I like that Denver slot for Mac Jones. I think that what they're doing with their offense, what they're doing with their weapons, they have enough at every skill position. He played a little bit with Jerry Jeudy when Tua went down 2 years ago in Alabama. So I'm not saying it's a lot there. But there's some familiarity there at that position, at the quarterback position for him, for that young wide receiver. It was a KJ Wright is out there, I think, is the other wide receiver.
KJ Hamler,
Jared Jeudy.
Jared Jeudy.
Noah Fant.
There's a lot of talent there. So at 9, like if you're between Trey Lance and Mac Jones, I think if he gets past Carolina, again, you got Joe Brady there. With what he did with LSU, I won't say it's very similar with that pre-snap read. I know I'm going with the ball. I can see it working in Carolina or at 9. Again, that's given if Wilson, Fields, and obviously Lawrence is off the board, and it's between Trey Lance and Mac Jones. I can see a scenario where Mac Jones leapfrogs everybody says Trey Lance is QB4 and Mac Jones hits 8 or 9, and then you see a Trey Lance at that 12 to 20 range for maybe us.
That's a great point. And remember, like the Broncos have a new GM who's with the Vikings. He was assistant GM with the Vikings, but he understands the quarterback situation, and he's refused several GM jobs waiting for this Denver job. So like that tells you like he knew what he was getting into. And I think Denver in a lot of ways is a year ahead of us in the sense that they've insulated the offense with talent. So to me, that tells me that's kind of like a signal that they're probably looking for quarterback. I would bet on it, to be honest. Because like out of all the quarterbacks in that draft class, like Drew Lock and Dwayne Haskins have showed absolutely nothing. Like Gardner Minshew has showed more than Drew Lock. And Gardner Minshew isn't a starter, and there's no doubt he won't be a starter unless he gets traded. So I think Drew Lock will get a chance, and they'll bring in competition. I wouldn't be surprised if they're aggressive trying to trade up. But let's move on. I don't want to go too much into the weeds here, but I think we should talk about Trey Lance next. And I know Todd, when I said that, his eyes lit up because he wants to talk some Trey Lance, and I'd love to hear your guys' opinion on him, because it seems like a common trend in this class is a lack of experience, right? It's not just Trey Lance. First of all, let's say that it's Mac Jones. Mac Jones has like one season. It's Kyle Trask, who has only been a starter. He hasn't been a starter in 5 years, dating back to high school. And then he crushed it. He broke like the SEC record for 4 touchdown games. I mean, it's insane to see this. And then you're also talking about Fields. I mean, Fields is a sophomore, so he only has a limited amount of games. And even Wilson has 3 years, but still, like besides Lawrence, who started as a freshman, there's a lack of experience. And I think that's big for a lot of like NFL coaches, especially. They care about that stuff. So I guess like Todd, we can start with you. Like, what are you worried about experience being a factor? And what are his other, like, we know his strengths, right? But like, what are some of his weaknesses, and what would be your like rebuttal to that? Because like my weaknesses to me is like, he's not very accurate deep. He's not very accurate in general, and they protect him with a really good running game. They protect him by not throwing the ball that much. So what would be your rebuttal? Because I know you like him, and I do too. All the top 4 guys in this draft, I love all 4 of them. I mean, I have no doubts any of them could be good. So we'll start with you, and we'll snake it around. We'll go to Deont'e and then Rod.
Okay, so Trey Lance. So no, first of all, I'm not worried about his lack of experience, and the reason being, I mean, we talked about Mac Jones having the same number of starts. There's also no direct correlation between limited experience in college and struggling in the NFL, right? Cam Newton came off of 1 year. Kyler Murray came off of 1 year. I think Mark Sanchez came off of 1 year. Dwayne Haskins came off of 1 year. It's a mixed bag, but it's not like 1 year. I think Mitch Trubisky, maybe not Mark Sanchez, Mitch Trubisky came off 1 year. But there's no direct correlation. There's also no correlation between starting for 3-4 years and being good. Actually, there's probably more guys who start for 3 or 4 years and aren't good. So I'm not really worried about his I'm not too worried about his experience. Also at the FCS level, I mean, when I think about it, guys either can do it or they can't. So I know we're trying to figure it out whether or not he can, but he was dealt the hand he was dealt, and he did what he did. So we just have to use what we have. So we know his strengths. All right. One of his first weaknesses that people don't really talk about much, and it doesn't really have to do with his game, but He's gonna have to change the way he finishes his runs in the NFL. That's the first one I want to touch on. He can't lower his shoulder in the NFL.
Baseball.
Yeah, he needs to spend Quincy Avery needs to spend a week with him on sliding, and they need to simulate when to do it and the timing of it and going out of bounds, because he will get hurt in the NFL. He had some injuries in college, nothing serious, minor dings and stuff, but he will get hurt in the NFL. He's a big guy, but the linebackers and the safeties, they can hit harder. That's the first weakness that no one thinks about, but could be a factor. Russell Wilson protects himself. Kyler Murray protects himself. Like Lamar Jackson protects himself. Got to learn to protect yourself when you run. Now, as a passer, weaknesses, it's accuracy downfield, but it's like the interesting thing is when he is accurate downfield, he's beyond perfect. Like he can drop it in the bucket, and that means the ball goes up and it drops down, like literally like it's dropping straight down into a bucket. The issue is just the consistency with that. When he's forced to speed up his mechanics and his motion due to some pressure, that's where you start to see some issues. You want to talk about a person who did not face a lot of pressure. That's Trey Lance. He played in the Alabama of the FCS. Now, it's not to say that he struggles under pressure, but like with every quarterback, that's where you'll start to see that. And then I think it is important to emphasize how easy it was at times for him. And that's not saying he was a one-read quarterback. That people use that term too loosely. Easy in the sense that North Dakota State was such a dominant running team. When they went play action, odds are it worked. Odds are those linebackers bit. Odds are those safeties bit, because you've been setting this up all game. So he's going to have to learn how to dissect things when it's not as clear, because the play action is not always going to work as well, or he's going to be doing straight drop backs from under center or from the gun. But the reason why I'm not worried about that is because he's such a smart guy and because he wants to be great. And so you don't see a lot of guys who have all the physical tools and then have shown the mental aptitude and then have the desire and the work ethic to get it done. You don't see those guys fail too much, in my opinion. But it's really just, it's not going to be nearly as easy as it was. Like, I mean, I cannot stress, it's not even a Mac Jones, like play action, turn around, and your guy, he's open, because everybody bit on the play action because you've run the ball 20 times and gotten 200 yards. So, it just tightening up the mechanics for the accuracy downfield and just getting used to not that play action not working as well as it did in college, because he won't be such a dominant running team.
Yeah, and I've done pretty much a lot of breakdowns with you in regards to that, so I won't belabor on that. But a couple of things that worry me with him is this: he's a project. It's going to take a while for him to, if he has a system where he can sit for maybe 2 years, maybe a year, a solid year, maybe 2 years, like kind of like a Jordan Love situation where he's inactive and he can just kind of, I think you'll see him reach his potential. Or I just think he has to be in a position where it's not that much pressure on him, where he can go behind the scenes, work on his craft. You have to have a coordinator that will work with him and help him and kind of lead him through. I mean, we see the RG3 situation where we kind of threw him out there and we were limited in what we can do. I'm not going to say he's going to be one read in the NFL, but you have to question those things. I think he'll be good if he goes to a contender where he can sit underneath a veteran for maybe a year, a veteran that's heading out soon. But I like his athleticism. I would love to have him in Washington. If he could sit behind Ryan Fitzpatrick for a year, just with those receivers, I think he would be deadly. But I'm not going to belabor on what Todd said, but I agree with everything he said.
Yeah, I love both your guys' points. So I'll flip it to Rod. Like, do you think he would fit with, if we could trade up? Let's say we could trade up and Trey Lance is on the board and we take him. Like, do you think he'd be a good fit for us, Rod?
Long term, yes. Short term, I don't see it. He'll be productive, but I think it'll come with a lot of mistakes that we've seen over the last few years that unfortunately Washington fans just don't accept early and often, right? He's a huge question mark. Love his potential, what he can be, but the ceiling is the basement, we don't know what it is, or the floor, we don't know what it is. Like that boom bust. I'd be lying if I said right now the name Tyree Jackson didn't come to mind. like at worst, right? And we all got it. We know what the quarterback position that can happen, right? You remove the names and you just look at on paper, you can make an argument that he could possibly be the number one overall pick, right? Just off the stats alone. But again, all the variables have always been in his favor at the collegiate level. And then when you're literally RPO, that's what it is. They just dressed it up, right? And the running back doing this, so that linebacker isn't Mika Parsons, or you throw in a linebacker, right, from LSU or something like that. The game changes. So I would love to have him. Again, this is a perfect situation. You got Ryan Fitzpatrick there. You let a quarterback go. He sits for a year. He never dresses. He learns. I think he has the intangibles a year from now. We've grown patience. He's a little bit more mature at the position, and he's good to go. But I just don't think, based on what he's produced at the collegiate level, if he's drafted in the first round, he won't get that option like Jordan Love got, because he don't have an Aaron Rodgers in front of him. He got a Ryan Fitzpatrick that if he has a 5-interception game, we've seen it before 2 years ago with Case Keenum and Dwayne Haskins, right? Put him in. They throw him in, he's not ready, and then what happens? So he's the one when you look at it and say, I mean, who are these guys talking about me? They're not in this position, right? But it's all good conversation. But it sucks that it's the truth.
So can I say one thing? This is not I'm not trying to start an argument. I kind of want to. I'm gonna bring some intrigue to this conversation, though, to this video. I'm in a minority here, where I actually don't think Trey Lance needs all that time to sit necessarily, and that's just personally. That's just because I think that he's going to have no problem grasping the NFL offense, and then I think his athleticism will allow you to do things that will simplify it, so you can build on what he does. But I actually. And like I said, I realize I'm in the minority, but I think he could come in early and actually have some success, kind of like what we saw Jalen Hurts do, where you're using his legs and he's using his legs and he's finding ways to make plays. And then he has the ability to build on that further as a passer. So I'm curious to see if that ends up happening, because that's kind of my theory on it, because I think he'll be ready to go in terms of like preparation. He's not going to be like Dwayne Haskins where you have to get him to work. And then I think his athleticism will buy him opportunities. And maybe it's just the personal bias that I have too, but I'm curious to see if that happens, because that's kind of how I feel about it.
It could, man. That's the quarterback position, man. These 5 quarterbacks are surefire, and they can get into another situation where the variables are different than college.
Exactly.
And 6 months from now, we're having a whole different conversation, right? But
right.
He's the one quarterback where, again, if you look at the variables surrounding them, competition.
No, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense.
You know what I'm saying? He's been the big kid in the park for 3 years now, and again, he needs to learn how to slide. Well, damn, I ain't had to, right? When am I gonna learn? And is it gonna be too late when I get that lesson? You know what I'm saying? Or
right.
I mean, they throw this pass for 4 years now. Oh, now I got to change that up. How long does that process take? Now, I agree with you. In the right situation where all the variables are consistent to what he's been at, that's not in Washington. We know that. I think that can happen, right? I just don't know if Washington at 19, or if we trade up to get him, is he going to, that added pressure that comes on to being great, right? Oh, by the way, the offensive line isn't nearly what you saw at any level you played at.
Right.
And so you look at those other variables, and then you say, not only is he worth the pick, but the added pressure that's going to come with it on both sides, right? Himself, and then the coach that essentially bet his future, tied his future to Trey Lance. Do you have that? Did you got that? The liquidity to do that? Because if you don't, you are to do it a year after his experience is over.
I agree.
Yeah. It kind of goes back to like what's translatable, and we talked about that a little bit before. Like creating off script, having that elite athleticism gives you a little more leeway. And I think that's something we've seen with Josh Allen. We've seen that even Daniel Jones, like I know you laugh now, but as a rookie, like what separated him was he could create outside the pocket, and he was really dangerous as a dual threat because people weren't ready for it. So that's a big separator there. So I'm going to speed things up a little bit because that's good, but I want to make sure we get to all the quarterbacks. So I'm going to talk about like superlatives for a second. So, and I'll start off like each one-on-one. So Todd, if you had to pick one quarterback in this class in round one, probably who do you think has the strongest arm?
Man, I'm gonna say probably Trey Lance.
Yeah, and I'd agree with you. I think it is Trey Lance, and I'll throw it over to you, Deont'e. Who do you think has the best pocket awareness out of all the quarterbacks? When I mean pocket awareness, I mean I don't just mean like creating off script. I mean the ability to sense pressure, the ability to stay alive in the pocket and throw the ball and sense pressure, read the defense, stuff like that.
You know the answer. You know the answer.
I think it's Mac Jones, but I think Zach Wilson's right there.
Okay. Yeah. And I think like a lot of the quarterbacks have good pocket awareness. Like I would say, easy answer. Like I would say Trevor Lawrence probably has the best pocket awareness, but like it's super close, right? And then I'll throw it to Rod. Like, who do you think is the best athlete as far as like running the football? And like you can go all the way into like round 7. I mean, there's guys like Jamie Newman we could talk about who are really good athletes, but who do you think? Would you go with Trey Lance there, or is there another guy you like, or what?
I like Justin Fields. I think he's more mobile. I think he knows when to get down. I think he knows when to cut. I think he has I think he could be a DB, right? If you look at a stiff one, a little stiff one. I think if you look at when you just look at his moves and his cuts, I think he has a little bit of breakaway speed. He has a second gear that I don't think Trevor Lawrence or any other quarterbacks have. So remember at Georgia, he was used at sometimes at a little flex wide receiver position at times. So.
So I'd agree with you there. Like I think Trey Lance is the better athlete if I had to separate them, but I think Justin Fields is underrated as a runner. And there's this guy Jayhawk Chalk on Twitter, Nathan Coleman. You can check out his work. Type in my name and look up Justin Fields, and I have this annoying tweet about him. And he was actually one of the most elusive runners in college football. He averaged over 8 yards per carry. He was number 1 among all quarterbacks in rushing grade for PFF. So he's a good runner too. He's a little different. Like he's not looking to run. He kind of just senses pressure, and it's like, oh no, I'm going to get sacked. I'm going to run. And he's pretty good at taking a hit and keeping going. But I think Trey Lance is a more natural runner, so I would probably have him there. But so I'm going to transition a little bit and talk about Justin Fields for a second, because that's my favorite prospect. So of course I get to talk about him. So my and I'll get to you guys, but I just want to like wax poetic about him. Give me like a minute. Okay. So with Justin Fields, I feel like people don't give him enough credit for what he's done in his career. So he's a sophomore and he's had an incredibly similar career so far to Trevor Lawrence. And that's the guy he's been compared with his whole life. They were both 5-star prospects. Some guys liked him as number 1, some guys like Trevor Lawrence, but you have to remember that Fields sat out a year. So as a sophomore, he's gone through the same up and downs that Trevor Lawrence went through as a sophomore. Trevor Lawrence had some duds too. And the dud games that Justin Fields did have, he had a great excuse for them. He had multiple coaches and multiple starters out because of COVID. And he was also playing against very good defenses in Northwestern and Indiana was another. So that's something to consider, but it's really interesting when you look at the dichotomy of Fields and Lawrence, because it sounds like blasphemy to say something like that. But when you look at their starts, what's interesting is Justin Fields beats out Trevor Lawrence in completion percentage, yards per attempt, adjusted yards per attempt, touchdown interception ratio, touchdown rate, interception rate, rush yards, rush touchdowns, and rush yards per carry. So as far as being an efficient passer, like Fields checks all those boxes. What people don't like about him is Ohio State, which I think is just a terrible argument. That's nonsense. Yeah. I think we don't need to go into why that's a bad argument, but I think the big thing that people talk about that's hard to quantify is like, he's a one read guy. And there's a lot that goes into one read because it's a relative term, right? It's one read, but if your wide receiver is running an option and you're also like throwing an option, and that you both have to read the defense simultaneously and make a throw and make a catch, there's a lot that goes into that. So it's almost like there's 3 reads there, right? It's not really one. So I like Fields a lot. It sounds obvious. Like I would have him above Zach Wilson actually. And I know that sounds crazy, but I'm kind of curious, like your thoughts about, I guess, like Justin Fields versus Zach Wilson. Like who would you take and why? So I'll start with you, Deont'e. Like who would you take between Zach Wilson and Justin Fields and why?
I think I'm going to take, I think I'll take Fields. I think I'll take Fields, and that's just because of the leadership qualities I've seen and just knowing that about him. And like you said, that threat, that 4-3 speed, and having that with the weapons and that we have in Washington, and not only that, in any system for that matter. I think you look at Jalen Hurts, you look at the successes Todd mentioned earlier that he had in Philly those last couple of games he played and he started in. And I think he's better than Hurts. I think he can duplicate that on multiple occasions. And I really believe it's tough. Like I said, I think I'm taking Fields, though. I like Fields. I'm not going to put the Ohio State whatever on him. I think he plays good football. He's accurate for the most part, and just that dynamic. And that's where I find myself in a cross between a Mac Jones who's consistent and you know what you're going to get, to a Fields who, man, his ceiling is just out of the roof. So I'm taking Fields over Wilson.
Okay. What about you, Rod?
Oh, Fields, it's an easy conversation. It's Justin Fields. I think he's the more complete quarterback at this point. I think he offers you a little bit more with his mobility, what he can do on the ground. Ohio State, to me, holds no credibility, no weight. He's a Georgia boy prior to that, right? So he's an SEC player prior to that. Now, he didn't get the starting job, but who's to say what he could have done in that system?
True.
The one read thing, in my opinion, three of these 5 quarterbacks we're talking right now are one read quarterbacks. Actually, 4 if you look at Mac Jones, Trey Lance, Trevor Lawrence, and Justin Fields. They all come from a similar system, in my opinion. But it's an easy conversation for me.
Yeah, I'm kind of going back and forth. I guess I'll be the odd man out here for the sake of argument because it's that close for me. I mean, I love Zach Wilson. There's definitely concerns with him, having this year and it just being such an outlier compared to his first couple of years. There's concerns about his size, which I don't really care about size in quarterbacks, but about injuries. But when I watch Zach Wilson, and it's not really anything bad about Justin Fields, like it doesn't have anything to do with anything like bad that he's done, but Zach Wilson just makes some special kind of plays that are kind of unique to him. I'm not going to say what I'm thinking because people will take it to another level, but he just makes some throws that it's not even about the physicality, like physically these other quarterbacks can make the throws, but in terms of like the mentality and then the accuracy to do it. And then just seeing it, just some of these throws that Zach Wilson has made. I mean, they kind of blow you away. The caveat to that is, well, he was playing like backyard football and he really didn't play in a lot of NFL pockets and had like 5 seconds to throw. Like that's more legit. And his downfield accuracy is phenomenal. So I guess I'd say Zach Wilson. Muted myself. Wouldn't be mad if it was Justin Fields, but I'm gonna argue for Zach Wilson this time, just because he's so fun and exciting.
Muted you. He didn't even want you to say Zach Wilson.
So I like Zach Wilson too. I like all 4. Like I don't think I think there's a tier, and I think like Fields and Wilson are in that same tier, and then the tier after that's probably Lance. Maybe Jones is the tier after that. Yeah. One caveat I'll say is like, so Zach Wilson, he only faced pressure on 74 of his dropbacks last year. So
that's wild.
He doesn't get a lot of pressure, and they have a top 10 offensive line. They have a perfect scheme for him, and they're playing with it's a lot like a Trey Lance. Like they're usually the better team
for sure
with their level of competition, but like, who knows if that translates? It's kind of hard to say. But I'm going to spin it around. We're not going to talk about Trevor Lawrence because like, there's no chance. Yeah, we're not going to get him. So let's not waste our energy there. Let's jump into the second and third round, because I've heard a lot of people that are really interested in taking a quarterback on day 2 or even day 3. And I think the idea is like we can develop him. He can sit behind Fitz. He can sit behind so-and-so. And I'm going to set you up for almost like a loaded question, because I'm going to have a narrative before I say anything, but so, and you guys know this with day 2 quarterbacks and day 3 quarterbacks, the percentage that they become a successful franchise quarterback is less than 5%. And I say that to say, like, it comes back to what I talked about before. It's opportunity costs. Do you want to take a gamble on a quarterback like Kellen Mond or Kyle Trask or whoever you like, Mills or Jamie Newman or whoever? Do you want to take a 5% hit rate or something close to that? Let's say it's 10% if I'm feeling very generous.
I can give you a number in a second.
Right. And
I knew the number.
from what I've seen, it's less than
It's
than
like
5.
It's like 2%.
It's like 2%, right? So it's minute. And I guess my point is like opportunity cost. Would you rather take a quarterback on day 2, or would you have a surefire position that has a much better chance of hitting, like a wide receiver or a linebacker or whatever you're interested in? They have a much higher hit rate. Okay. Because draft capital is beyond anything else. Draft capital is the highest indicator of future success in the NFL. And I always say that, like, I hammer that home, like draft capital is the driver. Okay. So day 2 and day 3, like that, you don't have a good chance of hitting on quarterback. So I don't know where I was going with that question. It was just me ranting, but I guess I'll throw it back to you guys. Like, I guess each of you can pick a quarterback and talk a little bit about them, and then I'll shit on a few of them, or I'll agree with you. But I guess I'll go, Rod. Who's a quarterback you like on day 2 or even day 3 that you're interested in?
So I don't have any quarterback outside of day 1, but if I'm going day 3 or undrafted free agents, I'm going at a fellow. I just moved to Texas, but I'm going with the Texas Longhorn, Sam Ehlinger. I like Sam Ehlinger. Yep, a Longhorn. I think he's very up and down, very inconsistent. He has a lot of things to work on, but if I'm throwing just a 7th round tour, then why not? When he's good, he's been good, right? His junior year in college, I think he threw for like 36 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, almost 4,000 yards with over a 60% completion rate down in Texas. His freshman year, I think when they played Oklahoma, a very, very impressive game. Has a little bit of mobility to him. He's not the fastest guy, but he's not afraid to run, right? He's not afraid to throw the ball either. So I keep drawing. What's my backup for Kansas City this year? Chase. Drawing a blank, but he stepped in the talking about. Game. Yeah, he was the backup for Aaron Rodgers for Chase Daniel. He was a backup. Yeah. Remember what he did? And he came in towards the end of the year for Green Bay a few years ago. Ended up getting him a big contract, and now he's with Kansas City and saved him in the playoffs against Cleveland. So, to me, that's what I see. If you're putting a gun to my head and say, hey, you got to pick a quarterback in the 6th or 7th round, I'm going Sam Ehlinger, and that's just what I'm going.
Okay. Yeah. No, I mean, he's had a long career, right? He's played a long time.
Played a long time. Again, it's Big 12. It's big football in Texas, right? I would love to see him with Steve Sarkisian. So I wish he'd had one more year. But with what he had, he was able to produce a little bit. Now, again, outside of these top 5, we should be talking quarterback. So you definitely put a question out of your ass. But because I think at the quarterback position, all agents past these top 5 are, hey man, so can I get him in for a camp? I don't think it's anybody that's intriguing enough to spend a day 2 or day 3 pick on. Yeah, no, and I agree. But I will say, like, a lot of people are interested in it. If you go and look on Twitter, or you go and look, a lot of fans are like, well, who's the quarterback of the future? And we better take one this year, because like, what's going to happen? So what do you think, Tay? Do you have a quarterback you like on day 2 or day 3? And you can save Kellen Mond for me, because like I'm gonna talk about him in a second. So if you have another guy, or you can talk about Kellen Mond. I mean, we can all pile on or wax poetic about him. I don't know, whatever.
First, Rod, I just want to say you're the man for that response. I appreciate your honesty and. But honest, man. You got to be honest. Rather you trying to figure out something, but no. In all honesty, I like David Mills. I saw his pro day, and the dude can run 4.58 in the rain, throwing darts, putting stuff in the money, and that just shows a testament of who he is. And that's what you look for in a later round prospect. I mean, for you think about Kirk Cousins, you think about Russell Wilson. I mean, we could do that same 2% for those guys as well. But at the end of the day, they came out and they're starters, and Russell Wilson is Hall of Famer. So it all just depends on fit. I like David Mills a lot. I like the fact that he was in a pro style offense. He was under David Shaw. So he was under center. And obviously he only played 7 games. So it's not a lot of work, just like every other quarterback in this draft for the most part, outside of Lawrence. And so give me David Mills. If I'm not taking him personally. I like him. I like his game. I think he can hit if he goes to the right system. But
Yeah, Davis Mills is someone I really like. I think he's a fast processor. He has like I think I read he had the fastest like snap to throw in college football last year, and he's a former 5-star prospect. He got injured and then he opted out, so he really should have stayed one more year, to be honest.
Yeah, I think he could have been a first-round pick if he stayed.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I like him, and man, you're grinding the tape. You're watching pro days in the rain, like that's hardcore. All right, what do you think, Todd? Who's a guy you like or dislike, or anybody?
I'll give a name. If I can quickly before that expound on what you said to start this was about later after first round quarterbacks, because I've done digging for myself as to why there should be no expectation for any quarterback outside of the first round to become a true franchise quarterback. Since 2000, 211 quarterbacks have been drafted outside of the first round. Of the true franchise quarterbacks, there's out of that 211, there's 6. There's Tom Brady, Drew Brees, there's Kirk Cousins if you want to count him. There's Derek Carr, there's Dak Prescott, and there's Russell Wilson. Those are the 6. Kirk probably barely counts for some people. So there's 5 or 6. Okay, so we'll say 6 out of 211. That's less than 3% of quarterbacks drafted after the first round have become true franchise quarterbacks. So you talk about we can find Russell Wilson in the third round. You know who the other Russell Wilsons are in the third round? It's Russell Wilson. He is the third round Russell Wilson. What about the fourth round? It's Dak Prescott and Kirk Cousins. That's it. Tom Brady is the only one from the 6th. Drew Brees and Derek Carr from the 2nd. That's it. So if you want to draft someone in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th and say we think he can develop, maybe, but don't have an expectation for him to become a true franchise quarterback. And then outside of that, the last thing on that, these guys, when they come in and they are supposed to sit and develop, they often don't. They often end up playing much earlier than expected, and they show their ability quickly. Kirk is the only one who sat for 3 years, played some, struggled in the game, although he played well that first game. Drew Brees started early. Tom Brady started earlier than expected. Dak started week 1. Russell Wilson started week 1, and Derek Carr started week 1. So the draft and develop outside of the first round notion and narrative also kind of doesn't exist. But I'll save that for a deeper conversation later. The name, I'm going to go with Davis Mills also.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
I like Jamie Newman, but I like a lot of what he does, downfield accuracy as well, but he throws a fastball every time, and it's really tough to teach a guy to throw with touch. It's tough to teach someone to stop only throwing fastballs. It's just how they're wired. It's how they've been doing it. But I think Davis Mills only played 13 games, has shown a lot to like, and so yeah, like you said, if he stayed and had a really strong year, maybe his first round pick, fast processor, can move, decently well. I think can get out of the pocket and make some plays and really has the velocity when he throws the ball. So, I'd be interested in Davis Mills to see how he goes. But any of these guys versus Kyle Allen or Taylor Heineke, I'd probably just stick with Kyle Allen, Taylor Heineke.
Yeah, and we're on the same page there. And what you mentioned, I mean, TLC, don't go chasing outliers. Okay? that is a common theme that I tell people all the time, and it's always the same. I get the same arguments. It's like, what about Terry McLaurin or what about Russell Wilson? The thing with outliers is there's a vividness bias where you remember the best moments from the best players and you don't remember the 250 other instances where it didn't pan out, because that's how our brains work. We're wired to do that mentally. So I totally understand it. So I'm going to flip the script here and talk about Kellen Mond, because I think I've seen a lot of people link him to DC.
A lot of people loved Kellen Mond.
And I understand it. And let me talk about, give me 2 minutes. So I'll talk about the positives first, right? So you're talking about experience, not just 4 years as a starter in the SEC against high level competition, but in a pro style offense, right? And that's something that a lot of guys don't have. And you can compound that by saying that he had a high level of competition he was going up against, and he played without very good skill players. The only guy who was drafted that he played with for a little bit was Christian Kirk, who's a good receiver in the NFL when he's healthy, and then Jay Sternberger, who's a backup tight end for the Packers. So he hasn't had a lot of talent around him. I believe they have a receiver this year. I forgot his name, but he's probably going to go undrafted or get drafted in the 7th round. So he hasn't had a lot of talent around him. And so I understand all the arguments. And on top of that, he's a dual threat quarterback. He's pretty good. I wouldn't put him in the same level, obviously, as Lance or Fields, but he's probably think of Ryan Fitzpatrick, but younger. He can run. He'll take a hole and go. He can do a RPO. He's pretty athletic. So he has that dual threat ability. But like, let's turn it around and talk about the things why I wouldn't touch Kellen Mond. I saw Chris Sims. I think Chris Sims had him like number 3, and I know how. Number 4. And I know how this happens. What happens is people are arrogant as evaluators. And I am too, right? Like my whole thing is I try to defeat as much bias as I can, but people watch film and then they get locked into what they've seen. And that's the gospel from there. And what it is it's take lock, it's confirmation bias. I've watched this and I know more than you. And this is what I've seen. And this is a fact. And what I would say to that is like, it's totally subjective. So what you see is not the same as what someone else sees. It's not the same as what someone else sees. But what I do have is I have numbers that add more context to the situation. And I can, and you're like, you're shaking your head like, oh, numbers, what does that mean? Like numbers are just an amalgamation of what happened on the field. But so I can see it on a spreadsheet or I can see it in an article. And with Kellen Mond, he's one of the most inaccurate quarterbacks in college football. And when we talk about things that transfer, accuracy transfers. And I have some nice charts here that I'll bring up here. But a few things I didn't like. He's inconsistent with anticipation and timing over the middle of the field. He doesn't feel comfortable throwing there. And beyond that, he has terrible accuracy down the field. So I wrote a few notes here. Under 50% of his targets beyond the line of scrimmage were deemed accurate. Under 50% of his throws beyond the line of scrimmage were deemed inaccurate. And you can argue like, PFF, they don't know how to chart stuff. They're not professionals. All right, well, it's still under 50%. Let's say it's under 60%. Let's say it's under 40%. That's awful. Okay. Yeah. And so to add a little bit more to that, his arm strength is not going to wow anyone. It's comparable to like Kyle Trask. So that's another thing. This last year, he ranked 74th with pressure out of all the college football. And let me reiterate that again. Out of all the college football quarterbacks this last year for pressure grade, like quarterback grade under pressure, he ranked 74th. Most all the other quarterbacks that we're talking about all ranked in the top 10 in that stat. And I built a nice little spreadsheet of this too, because I'm a nerd like that, and you guys can all roll your eyes there. But let me bring it up here. So I have the clean pocket grades, and we talked about how clean pocket is very predictable. Out of all the quarterbacks in the top 6, the top 7, he ranks 7th. He has an 89.1 grade out of a clean pocket. That's one of the worst in the country. I believe that's 26. So 26, not even close to the top 10. So he's just not accurate to any parts of the field. And if you're not accurate, what are you? Like what? I don't understand the fascination with him, and the numbers bear that out. Like give me something he's really good at. And I don't know, like you can argue he doesn't have skill position players, but why are you still not delivering an accurate ball, even if your skill position players aren't good? You know, like that's my question. You can still deliver an accurate ball, even if they suck. It's just a matter of do they catch it. Right. So that's kind of my caveat there, but I guess I've waxed poetic enough about Kellen Mond, but needless to say, I'm not interested. I don't know about you guys.
I'm 100% with you. I watch, you watch these guys, like watch every game from the last year. And it's like, even if you don't have the context of the numbers with Kellen Mond, like nothing he does impresses you really. Nothing he does stands out. Nothing because you like the eye test you talk about. If you want to just talk about the eye test, you watch him and nothing he does says, hey, that's an NFL quarterback. You just like his athleticism. Dak Prescott came from A&M. He kind of looks like Dak Prescott. He's similar size, similar build. He can run like Dak Prescott.
Both can't throw the deep ball. Yeah, there's another one.
Exactly. So people fall in love with those like kind of slim comparisons. But if you watch his games, there's just not much to be impressed with in like literally watching him play. Whereas with the top 5, all of them are going to have plays that are impressing you. If you don't get to the numbers yet, you just watch the film like Chris Sims does. You just watch the film. I don't know how you come away saying Kellen Mond is more impressive than Justin Fields or Trey Lance. I don't
because because he doesn't cross-check his work. I think that's a big part. When I scout and I write these evals and I study guys, I look at an aggregate ranking of like people I trust in the industry that I know are smart, and I cross-check my work to make sure I'm not crazy and going out on a limb just for attention. And not like if I feel conviction, like I'll rank guys differently, but I don't understand it. And the other argument people make with Kellen Mond is the Senior Bowl. He shined at the Senior Bowl. And every year this happens. The Senior Bowl, it's a few practices. It's, 7-on-7s, 1-on-1s. And he was awesome at the Senior Bowl. And I have an amazing stat for you from the Senior Bowl, because like I listened to PFF and I read their articles and I was checking this out. So you guys know what like big time throws are. That's one of their like key metrics. The big time throw is like a high leverage throw, a difficult throw that generates an explosive play that continues a drive. So Kellen Mond, during his senior year, his whole year, he had 12 big time throws. And for context, that's like below 50th percentile for a quarterback. During the Senior Bowl, all the practices in the game, which is a wonky game, he had 6 big time throws. So it's like, it's really weird how like inconsistent that is. And like throughout his career, it's gone up and down, and he's a roller coaster. So that's another thing. But like, do you guys have any thought about Mond or any other like quarterback? I guess we could talk about Kyle Trask for like a second. I don't know.
Once you leave the top 5, is if you're an agent, you're calling for training camp positions. I mean, at the end of the day, it only takes one guy. It only takes one guy in the war room to say, hey, look, Kyle Trask is our guy. I can make him better. David Mills, whoever it is, it only takes one guy.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at the numbers and the stats outside of the top 5, you would have the hardest time to convince anybody that, hey, this guy's worth wasting the draft capital to spend 1, maybe 2 years to have this guy pan out to just be a backup that could come in and maybe win you 1 or 2 games in an emergency type situation. I just don't see it outside of the top 5.
Yeah. What do you got, Tay?
Yeah. Trask, he after that bowl game where he threw like 4 picks within like the first 10 minutes, I was saying, I'm good on Trask. Mond reminds me of like without saying it disrespectfully, he just reminds me of like a not so good Colin Kaepernick. So I'm good on any of those. I like Davis Mills. I do like him a lot. He kind of reminds me like Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning, in his stature, the way he delivers the football. But like Rod said, them top 4, them top 5, I think that's where you got to stick your head at. It's
the bad year for quarterbacks. Like if I could have stayed an additional year, I would have stayed an additional year. It's just the level is just so the disparity is just too wide to come out and be a 3rd, 4th tier quarterback.
I'm going to shock you guys. I'm going to give a little a pushback on Kyle Trask here. I know everyone hates him. I understand. What I will say is there's the big thing with scouting is I try to fight bias when I can. And bias in general, you should try to fight it. It's usually not good. One thing, there's a bit of recency bias. So if you remember, he threw 3 interceptions in the first quarter of that game, but like the context is 2 of those interceptions probably weren't his fault. And on top of that, he was playing without 2 first-round picks and Pitts and also Kadarius Toney, a bad offensive line, and all 3 of their starting receivers didn't play as well. So he had no one to really play with, and he's still a guy who like broke the SEC record for consecutive 4 touchdown games. He led the NCAA in passing yards and passing touchdowns. I mean, he still had a pretty good year. It's just he's not a guy I'm interested in, but I don't understand how like Mond is instantly ahead of Trask when Trask was a better quarterback in college than Mond was. So
Right.
like, you'll have to explain that to me, but I don't want to keep going on about this, but I think we kind of covered a broad range of topics today and really gotten some nice detail there. We got Tay over here talking about like grinding the practice tape of a quarterback there in the rain. Just like that takes some detail. And Todd's over here, like there's 216 quarterbacks. I mean, that warmed my heart.
Foles out, man. He left out Nick Foles.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a champion. He's a Super Bowl MVP. All right.
That's true. That's true.
He's a guy.
Yeah, he's not.
But I think
quarterback.
he's not. He's not.
Hey, man.
And I will say,
he got a ring.
Yeah, I was gonna say like he's got a ring. I was gonna say like I don't want to like bring up sore subjects for anyone because I understand this is polarizing, but Kaepernick probably could have been number 7 on that list if he wasn't blackballed and he was giving another opportunity to play if the owners weren't assholes. He could have been the next guy who could have he would be fringy like Kirk Cousins, but he had a chance because he did it all at a young age. But
Exactly.
I don't want to keep talking. I think we kind of covered it all. I guess I'll turn it over to Rod because I kind of stole the host mic for a second to come up with crazy questions.
No, absolutely,
but
man. You had them coming, man. Again, we had great insight. We'll forego. I think we all know who our quarterbacks are. We wanted to run through the exercise for 3 minutes. If we had to leave here with a quarterback that we'd pick, I think as a group, the consensus would be who. I think we're all kind of.
Are we assuming trade up for Washington or just pick period?
That's a great question. I would just say.
It's a good question.
If you had the leverage to pick up, and we both made arguments that earlier. So if all cards are created equal, you could do whatever you wanted to do. If you had to trade up, and what would be your draft capital in your opinion for whatever pick you wanted to get the quarterback for?
I'm cool.
Are you saying the consensus?
No, just
what we agree on.
We'll end with your take, your individual take. All right. So
I'd say Justin Fields.
So you're not getting
Justin
19. Fields. So what would it take to get him, in your opinion?
What would it take? Whatever it takes.
Or whatever it takes. So you just whatever it takes. You throwing everything.
Yeah,
in.
maybe I'm by myself on that, but yeah, first next year, third next year, second, third, yeah, whatever it would take to go up and get your quarterback. I have no problem with being aggressive at quarterback this year.
I think RG3 changed that in Washington. We'll never see a trade like that ever again.
PTSD. It's real.
PTSD.
Yeah, exactly. We'll never see that. So you could sit by yourself with Justin Fields. He won't end up in Washington. How about yourself, Deont'e?
Hey, I'm going Fields too. After this conversation, I'm gonna stick with Fields, and I'm gonna move from Jones on to Fields. Although I love Jones, I'm going 3 first. And I'm sitting at the table, and we're just gonna roll with it. I don't want to give up that second and those 2/3 because I think those are valuable.
Gentlemen, do you not realize our team is not in this position if we don't have the first rounders from every last 4 drafts, right? You don't have Jonathan Allen, you don't have Deron Payne, you don't have Montez Sweat, you don't have Chase Young, right? You're not in a position to have this conversation. Without that draft capital.
But it all comes to a head at some point without a quarterback. None of those guys matter, in my opinion, without the quarterback. Now that you have
you got to pay them all too. Just think the salaries. You got to pay those 4 D linemen. If you want to keep them, that's one. Think of those first round contracts. You don't have to pay for it later on. You know.
I'm trading them. I don't even care. I'm heartless about this. It's a business. Like
I'll trade them too. I'll trade them this year.
I'll trade him to Dave Gettleman. That dude will take like 2 first-round picks for it. But no, on that subject though, I don't. We always think in like finite cases for draft picks, but like if you do draft a franchise quarterback, understand that he is worth 2 or 3 first-round picks.
Oh, yeah.
So players can appreciate. Usually they depreciate, but like, how much is Chase Young worth now? He's worth more than 2 first-round picks, probably, right? So like players can appreciate. So that's something to keep in mind. But like you already know what I'm gonna say. Like if in a vacuum, if I could choose one of the top 3, I'm gonna go with Justin Fields. He is in fact the most accurate quarterback in the draft, more accurate than Trevor Lawrence. And one thing I didn't talk about is like you talk about like how their offenses create yards. So Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, they're at the top of the league and screen yards and yards behind the line of scrimmage. And that kind of tells me like it's a lot of one read stuff and screens, but Fields was near the bottom. He creates on his own. He has to like throw down the field, and to still be the most accurate quarterback out of all of them, including deep passes, is pretty impressive. And then throw in the rushing capability, and that's kind of that high floor you're looking for. So I'm a big Fields guy, but I like all 4. I feel comfortable with all 4. And I would say whatever it takes, like I'll add on to it. I don't care. Like do it or
join the club, Rod. Come on.
No, I'm not joining the club, gentlemen. I'm on my own.
Rod, I'll say this though, like after free agency, I think some people are changing their minds because they're like, oh, this team is pretty good, and maybe we just are a player away. And that's kind of like that's what I'm seeing at least. But you know what? At the end of the day, like if not this year, it's got to be next year.
It does have to be
whatever it takes.
It
doesn't matter. Yeah,
Keaton
because
Slovis.
like Ron Rivera he's getting up there in age. He needs to compete now. And I think he's in win now mode, even though we are rebuilding, like he's going to do whatever it takes. So
I think,
so don't be surprised if you see a trade up or at least them exploring their options.
I also don't think it would cost 3 first-round picks, actually. especially if you're moving up to like 7 or like 9 or something. I think it would be less than what people think, like pricey, but less than what people think.
No, I agree with you. Now, if he falls to 7 and 9, which I personally, I don't see him getting past 4. You can tell me Matt Ryan restructured his contract, but again, that's just 1 year close to retirement. That doesn't stop. That's just like Ryan Fitzpatrick for us. That doesn't stop you getting your franchise quarterback.
Right.
Well, I won't say franchise, but Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers, right? We just saw that a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't stop anything. So he can still go to Atlanta. It'd be a perfect situation. They need a feel-good story with that entire franchise. So maybe it works out. He gets to go home, right? But to wrap this up, I'm with you guys in the consensus. Yes, Justin Fields, I think, is a clean sweep here. I think he's, in my opinion, Trevor Lawrence's side, the best prospect for this team that I think can come in and contribute. But I'm not throwing the farm for him. All right.
Stick to your guns, Rod.
I will not.
Stick
I'm
to your
in Houston.
guns.
All right.
We all have our philosophies.
Watching a team here in Houston fall apart around one guy with Deshaun Watson, and it's unfortunate that
sad.
This team
It really is sad. Yeah,
it's a sad situation, but they have the picks wasn't for him. But I'm just saying, in a sense, a team that literally has no draft capital, and all they have is this shiny quarterback. They're waving in front of everybody, say we're not trading him. But a different conversation. But I guess maybe there's a little bit of a bias there, where like I've seen how bad it can be, so I'm loss aversion. Keep him up first. If it doesn't work out, I still have, like you said, the leverage to go into next year. With the same attitude, but again, at the end of the day, you get best player available, and you just continue to build what you have.
Yeah. So I think we can end it there. Like, maybe if you guys have anything else to add, like each of us, like my one thing I forgot to mention was, so another thing, another thing about Kellen Mond is he ranked in the top 5 in sack rate allowed. Like his offensive line basically didn't give up any sacks. They were one of the 5 best at preventing sacks. So to still be inaccurate, remember I talked about like throwing in a clean pocket, to still be inaccurate, that is a red flag. And I'm sure I'm going to get angry tweets about this later, but I'll shut up about Kellen Mond. But that's my last point. We can turn it over to Todd and Deont'e. If you guys have anything to promote or bump, go ahead and do it.
Just, as always, just check out our Twitter. We say smart stuff, I think. And we do some film breakdown stuff, and check out our podcast, Tay and Todd Podcast, as always, and check out our film breakdown stuff on YouTube. All of it's just Tay and Todd, and I don't think anyone else uses that name. So if you search Tay and Todd, we should be the only thing that pops up. Podcast, Twitter, YouTube.
Hot Chicken Kitchen.
Kitchen.
Try it out.
What?
Yeah, Rod's like antenna went up. Like, what's that?
If you're in the DC area, go to Hot Chicken Kitchen, get a Nashville style chicken sandwich. I think.
Oh, that's what you said. Okay, I thought you said something.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
Get your mind out of the gutter. Right?
We're talking about food.
Hey,
talking about food here. So,
hey guys, again, this is draft day. The War Room discussing quarterbacks. I want to thank everybody again for impressive and hopeful insight. Hopefully, we didn't disrespect any prospect. At the end of the day, being an NFL player is a dream that at some point we've all had. So take what we said, man, for a grain of salt. I think you could take some nuggets out of this and go do your own research. As I look back at my Tyreek Jackson comparison, like, that's kind of harsh. But the truth of the matter is, man, it's a good conversation. Who knows what can happen, man? So again, that's that disclaimer that be on those health commercials. Like, do good for you, but everything else in your world could go bad. That's one of those things. Make sure I put that in there. Again, this has been Draft Day, the War Room Quarterback Edition. Please stay tuned as we will be doing all the other special positions, as well as our original limited series Draft Day coverage, where we cover every position. Again, this is Rod Murray and Nate Coleman. Thanks for watching.